Console gaming. Many say it's on the way out as device consolidation brings more and more functions under single system usage, and maybe they're right. Maybe this is the last era when your video games get to live in their own special magic box instead of being just another set of apps on your cold, lifeless, probably Apple-branded monolith. But before the age of dedicated gaming rides off into the sunset, let's take a look back at when the console was king. I'm the Game OverThinker, and these are the top 10 consoles of all time. Number 10, Xbox 360. If anyone other than Microsoft, operating near the height of their omnipresence as a technology company, had been behind the original Xbox, we probably wouldn't have seen a sequel to the system, given that it was really only around for 4 years and had only one exclusive franchise that made any real impact, though it was a pretty goddamn big impact. And they couldn't give it away in Japan during the last generation when that was a truly meaningful metric, but Microsoft was behind it and they did make another, and the true potential of the Xbox brand was allowed to shine through. The first wave of 360s were as clunky and buggy as gamers had come to expect from Microsoft hardware, but the eventual game lineup had the best balance between robust and diverse of its generation, and the emphasis of online play and multimedia functionality were industry-redefining game changers. In terms of how the modern game console is expected to function in the 21st century home entertainment matrix, we are still living in the world the Xbox 360 created. Number 9, the original PlayStation. Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII. We could probably stop right there, honestly. Speaking of industry redefinition, before Sony got into the market, the idea of a broader electronics company succeeding in the video game console wars was a pipe dream. Many had tried, all had failed, and even Sony only got in because what was supposed to be a co-production deal with Nintendo fell through. Indeed, many including me have argued that the PlayStation owes its success more to Nintendo sticking with cartridges and Sega being on what turned out to be the last ride than their own decisions, but it can't be denied that the machine we for some reason call the PSX was a fine piece of hardware with a killer lineup that laid the groundwork for one of the all-time great console legacy. Number 8, the Nintendo Wii. Nintendo put everything on the line for the Wii, going against not only the tide of a broader games industry that was chasing processing power, graphic muscle, and third-party interchangeability, but also against their own famously rigid traditions, embracing a radical gambit to build an entire console around a unique control interface that would be introduced to the world not by their reliable mascot, but by a brand new franchise that emphasized group play and real-world physicality. The end result was the third best-selling console of all time, and even if you do think it was all due to Wii Sports, well, that is the game that best exemplified the device, so what? Its other landmark games may have been few and far between, but the Wii was the most culturally ubiquitous thing in video games for a whole generation, and don't kid yourselves about how much the Wii being the last great family play console means for its legacy. We're only a few years out from when rediscovering their old boxes of Wii Remote peripherals starts hitting folks for whom it was the centerpiece of their childhood with the same emotional wallop that digging out an old NES delivers to my generation. Number 7, the Sega Genesis. Like the man said, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, when I was dead broke man, I couldn't picture this. It's probably unfair to both vanguards of the 16-bit wars that they'll always be straining to escape each other's respective shadow, but the fact is, if you were a Nintendo loyalist in the 90s, like I was, you may have yet to discover just how great the machine that, if only for a moment, made Sega really was. Cast by its own Western marketing as little more than the naughty boy alternative to the House of Mario, the Genesis did indeed play host to games that did what Nintendo don't, perhaps forever most notably the blood code version of Mortal Kombat, and the birthplace of Sonic the Hedgehog, but it was also home to quirky, unique, and underappreciated classics from developers like Treasure and Sega itself that endure to this day. Number 6, the Nintendo 64. If all the N64 did was allow Super Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time to exist, jointly creating the architecture upon which the next 2 decades of 3D action gaming would be built, it would deserve this spot. Though ultimately overwhelmed in its day by the more versatile devices cranked out by Sony and Sega, well, eventually mostly just Sony, the N64 and its iconic analog control stick were engineering works of art and played host to games whose own sequels are still trying to exceed them. Nothing that could play host to Conker, Star Fox 64, GoldenEye, and Diddy Kong Racing could possibly be left off this list. Number 5, the Dreamcast. May we all be so lucky to have our last effort at anything be as beautiful as Sega's last console. The Dreamcast was, for better or worse, the martyr console where the ideal of quirky, insular, games for game's sake, Edenic bubble era of the medium made its last stand in the new era, and while we'll forever debate whether gaming was better or not before or after the Sony PlayStation rewrote the DNA of the industry, you can feel what was lost and mourn for what might have been whenever you look back at the Sega Dreamcast. A gamer's game console with a global soul and an artist vision, this is where an entire epic of gaming made its last best case before the world, and made it well enough that we'll never forget. Number 4, the Atari 2600. It had a single button, a single joystick, a handful of switches, and wood paneling that made it look old even when it was fashionable. But the Atari 2600 brought the arcade home for a generation and planted the first and most lasting flag of home gaming as a concept in the cultural psyche. Its software, iconic. Its legacy, incalculable. We wouldn't be where we are now without it. And while it earned a reputation for what we now call shovelware and rush jobs that helps doom the industry for a time, a remarkable number of its classic games are just as playable today. Number 3, the Super Nintendo. There's an argument to be made that the SNES had the best games lineup by percentage of all time, produced at a moment when designers were able to match the lessons of the 8-bit era to the power of the 16 and provide increasingly accurate translation of arcade and PC mainstays. Just a cursory glance at its lifetime roster is enough to wow you with the reminder that that level of game diversity was once not only possible but expected from a home console, and that's before you get to industry reshaping innovations like Mode 7 scaling and rotation, shoulder buttons, and the Super FX chip. Now you're playing with power, super power. Number 2, the Nintendo Entertainment System. I know I'm as surprised as you are that it's not number 1. After all, none of this would be here without it. If Nintendo hadn't found a way to get retailers back on board with home consoles, it's entirely possible that home gaming might have remained a bonus feature for home computers at best, stifling the evolution of the medium and possibly resulting in a world where everything from arcade to PC gaming dried up from lack of cultural primacy. It's like trying to imagine a world where there was never a Walt Disney, or a Siegel and Schuster, or a Lee and Kirby, or a Steve Okay, bad example. The NES was a miracle machine, plain and simple, and there's only one console that could possibly edge it out for first place. Number 1, the PlayStation 2. Nintendo fans, put down your torches and pitchforks. While the NES is unquestionably of greater historic importance, the PlayStation 2 holds a microscopic but all-important edge in one key area: games. Yes, other systems on this list may have boasted more stone-cold classics or exclusives you like better, but the PS2 had variety and choice like no system before or since. It was accessible, the tech was rock solid, the DualShock controller alone was a revolution, and save for a relative handful of competitor-exclusive series, it felt like eventually everything came out for this, from classics to new hits to experimental oddities you'd never see in physical release today. And as the last meaningfully backwards-compatible console, it also gave extended life to the PSX library as well, giving PS2 owners the best lineup by volume, hell, probably ever. Oh, and making it a DVD player also popularized digital home media and changed the face of consumer video and film archiving forever. You know, that little thing. Look, cut me open and I'll bleed black and gray, but the PlayStation 2 is the best console ever made. And that's the list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Tell us about it in the comments and suggest other lists you might like to see. Remember to like, subscribe, share with all your friends, and please consider donating to the Movie Bob Patreon to support this and other series like it. Hey gang, here's a question that keeps coming up. If your handle is Movie Bob, where are your movie reviews? Well, my old reviews are in a lot of places. You'll find many of them on my YouTube channel, but you'll find the brand new ones on Geek.com, an awesome site that's also your one-stop news source for science, TV, gaming, technology, nerd culture, the works. You can find all my reviews directly by going to geek.com/author/bchipman, because that's my real name, and you can get regular updates on all my reviews and all of Geek.com's other great content by signing up for their kick-ass newsletter at subscribe.geek.com. And don't forget to also subscribe to the Geek.com YouTube channel, where you'll find the videos that accompany my reviews and tons of other great content too. Remember, that's Geek.com, the Geek.com newsletter, and Geek.com on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss out on all the latest Movie Bob reviews. You can also check out my own new website, Movie Bob Central, where you'll find my blog, links to all my work, and shop for my books, ebooks, and future Movie Bob products. And please remember to like these videos, share them with all of your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching another Movie Bob production.